Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Community and Culture Committee. I declare the meeting open at 6:08 p.m. I would like to acknowledge the beautiful people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of all lands, waters, and sky in the Georges River area. I pay my respect to elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who live, work, and meet on these lands. Are there any apologies for tonight's committee meeting? Seems that no. Okay, we move on. I've been advised that Councillor Elmere, Councillor Konjaski, and Councillor Smirtley have requested to attend the meeting via audio visual link. Are there any other requests to attend tonight's meeting remotely? No. Staff and public are reminded that. Oh, yeah, sorry. Can I please have a motion to accept the request to attend tonight's meeting remotely via audio visual link? Can I have moved by Councillor Ash M.B. Hapaha and seconded by Councillor. Can I have a seconder, please? Yeah, Councillor Wei. Thank you. All in favour say aye. Or against say no. I declare carried. Staff and public are reminded that this meeting is being recorded for minute-taking purposes and is also being broadcast live to the public on Council's website. In accordance with Section 5 of Council's Code of Meeting Practice, the recording will be made available on Council's website. The order of business is as shown in the agenda, which has been made available. Staff and public are reminded that this meeting is open. Doors to the meeting room are to be left open unless the meeting moved into a closed, that means confidential session, according to Section 14 of the Code of Meeting Practice. Only if the meeting moves into a closed confidential session will the public broadcasting of the meeting be suspended. Council's Code of Meeting Practice prohibits the electronic recording of meetings without the express permission of Council. Mobile phones must be turned to silent during the meeting. Deputy Mayor Councillor Lansbury disclosed a non-significant non-pecuniary interest in item COM 019-23 Cotley Community Property Report 1 April 2023 to 30 June 2023 for the reason that she was recently invited to become the patron of Cobra Historical Society, which operates out of Cass Cottage Museum, named in the report. Also, Councillor Lansbury's son is a life member and a committee member at Cass Park Football Club, which is located at Charles Perry Reserve, named in the report. Councillor Lansbury will remain in the meeting and take part in consideration and voting on this item. Do any other councillors have any interest to declare? No, thank you. And I've been advised that there are no speakers registered for tonight's meeting. There are no reports presented to the Community and Culture Committee meeting held on the 13th of June 2023 for consideration. All previous committee minutes have been confirmed. So we're going to committee report now. So the first item will be COM 017-23. Place naming updates and name proposal for Hurstville Oval Community Pavilion. Can I have Justin to give us an overview of that? Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. Councillors, this report contains an update for recent place naming and a name proposal for the pavilion at Hurstville Oval that's being built as part of the project there. And when it comes to that recent place naming activity, we're talking about the names that were recently gazetted. We've got Arthur Hardiman Reserve for those lots of land in Oatley related to the former Oatley Bowling Club site, and Theatre Lane for an unnamed road in Riverwood, and Boobook Place for an unnamed road in Oatley. So the main substance of the report relates to that Percival Oval Pavilion as part of the related master plan for Hurstville Oval and Timothy Reserve. And we received a suggestion from the St George District Cricket Club to name that new pavilion in honour of Les Blackshaw, who was former community member, former Mayor of Hurstville, member of the St George District Cricket Club, contributor to junior recreational clubs, and significant community member of the time. And as part of our normal process, we look at the truth of that application and look at if there's other names that might be relevant. And one of the relevant names that we identified was related to Nell Gould, that you can see in the report in paragraph 16. Nell Gould was a very another significant community member who also had a very strong link to the Hurstville Oval precinct, representing Australia at the Empire Games and coaching at the Empire Games, and a co-founder of the St George District Women's Athletics Club, which also, like the cricket club, calls that oval home. It's their home ground. And yeah, research showed that Nell Gould was an eligible name, and the proposal that we're putting before you, councillors, is for the new pavilion to be called the Blackshaw Gould Community Pavilion, and that name is intended to represent those two eligible names, as well as the community focus for this pavilion. Are there any questions related to that recommendation?
Yeah, I've got a question. I'd just like to, if at all possible, to include Nell Gould in the actual recommendation to be named to name the pavilion after Nell Gould. I know there's great history there, obviously, for cricket, but there's also great history there for athletics, not only for Nell, you know, with her starting the club for women. There's a great history at that club there for athletics. And I noticed in one of our briefings last year, we had, they mentioned that was still an athletic field, which majority of people around the area wouldn't realise. I didn't realise that it was still an athletic field because it's used mainly for cricket. So I think it would be very important to actually include Nell Gould as one of the naming, to have the option of naming rights on that pavilion if possible.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. So Council Mort, recommendation B is that Council endorse the name Blackshaw Gould Community Pavilion for the new pavilion at Hurstville Oval. So is that is okay, or you would like it specifically to say Les Blackshaw and Nell Gould, and therefore this is the name suggested?
Yeah, I understand that you know, Blackshaw has a great affiliation with the cricket with the oval there, but I'd still like to include some form or other that we have Nell Gould in there. Maybe, make it the Nell Gould Pavilion, because I know Blackshaw has been recognised in other parts of the LGA through different things. So is that a possibility, or would it have to read the Nell Gould and Blackshaw Pavilion? I just don't know how it works. I'd like to.
So your suggested recommendation is to remove the name Blackshaw and just have the Gould Community Pavilion?
Yeah, I would like that.
So in terms of, that's obviously up for, if you'd like to do a amendment. In terms of, the officer's recommendation. We've just followed our normal policy process, which is to look at each name for their merit. And that's why we've come up with the Blackshaw Gould, because it's similar to Booth Saunders, the double name, and recognising that both had sort of significant connection to place, and both were eligible as per our policy.
So if that's possible, I would like to amend that. So,
Okay, so maybe we'll just get further if there's any questions, and then we'll put the report, and then we'll see if it.
Right.
Okay.
thank you.
Oh,
Was there any other questions? Yeah.
Thanks. Through you, Madam Chair. I just did have a question for the Director. Given the fact that these names have been put forward, as in Les Blackshaw and Nell Gould, will there be something within the pavilion to actually explain to people who they are? Because unless you are a cricket aficionado, you might not know that Les Blackshaw had this sort of historical connection to establishing the ground. And I, to be honest with you, till I read the report, I didn't know who Nell Gould was. I'd never heard of them. So I just think if we're going to be using these names to name a pavilion, it would be really important to have some sort of reference there, some sort of, like we've got historical markers or something. Do we know, was that an intention? Is that a normal part of the process?
Through you, Madam Chair. Councillor Lansbury, one of the options, like you say, is a historical marker where you get a bit more interpretive information to explain a name and their connection to place. The other thing that we've done as council sporadically is an interpretive sign where you can even have pictures and a little bit more text where you could explain the connection of Les Blackshaw, Nell Gould, and their linked to the high achievements that they have connected to place, and also representing Empire Games and Olympics and the like. So those would both be options to explain that to someone like myself as well before we do the research. What their detailed history is. It is nice to show that.
So would that happen, if I can just ask a follow-up question, would that happen as a matter of course, or is that something that we'd need to actually specifically move in the form of a motion to include that information? But the reason I ask is that there's a lot of places around the area, PJ Ferry Reserve, for example, people always say to me, who was PJ Ferry? And it's like, well, a former mayor of Cogra, but I don't think there might be a plaque inside that indicates that. But I just think it's really important when we name facilities after a local identity that there is some sort of reference that we can point to. So, would we need to move a notice of motion to have that information available, Justin, or is that something that you would just do?
Through you, Madam Chair. So historical markers is an annual program where the community or councillors or council officers could put forward a nomination, recognising that it might be more high priority if they've just built a place or named a place, and it's not easy to understand why. That could be a higher priority for a historical marker, but that's an annual process where we open it up for suggestions and then evaluate the suggestions we get, and we can put in up to 5 each year under that policy.
So if you wanted to do a part D to say that those names are then considered as part of the historical marker program, that's probably, and then you wouldn't have to resubmit. We can just put them in that program. Is that? Yeah. Okay.
I think that's a good idea, Catherine.
oh, thank you.
I'm glad you can hear us. Okay. Was there any other questions on this report?
Any other questions from any
Okay.
councillors? If
Right, so
not,
you need a mover and a second.
yes. If not, can I have a mover for the original report?
I'll move it.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Stratikopoulos. Can I have a seconder for that?
I'm happy to second it as long as we can add that part D. That's okay.
Okay. Was seconded by Deputy Mayor Councillor Lansbury. All in favour?
Hang on, we'll just get the word. Okay. So in part D, it says that the proposed, sorry, I can't read that from here. Names be considered. There we go. Thanks, Nat. For inclusion in Council's historical markers program for 2023-2024. Am I in the right financial year? Yeah. It's just closed. 2020. That's last year.
Yes.
Yeah. So for this financial year. Yeah. You're fine with the wording? Yep. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So next.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question regarding the historical markers section? Is that something that would be done within the pavilion, or is that historical markers will be something that's, because I think it's a good point that Deputy Mayor Lansbury brings up, and I think it has extreme value when it's done inside the pavilion or within the pavilion grounds. If it was to be Blackshaw Gould, say for instance, and then we have something on Blackshaw, something on Gould, and a historical sort of spiel on exactly who they were and what they and how their contributions were to the local area. So is that something that would be done within that pavilion area, or is it historical markers just within our LGA that sort of explain who Nell Gould is and who Les Blackshaw is?
Through you, Madam Chair. Councillor Elmy, we would have as a priority to put them at the pavilion to explain the naming, and we could put them on sandstone plinths like we sometimes do, or on the wall of the building, and then you have that understanding of when it's named that. So on a sign, you can understand some of the history in that same place where the name is. They've got such a strong connection to place, it would be relevant to have a marker at the place of the oval because they're so well linked to the clubs that use that ground.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, so I call for all in favor, say aye. Against, say no. So I declare carried. So we move on. Right, okay. So we move on to second.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I'll just interrupt you for a moment. Councillor Konjaski, I'd just like to declare an interest in COM 019-23, Quarterly Community Property Report, 1st of April 2023 to 30th of June 2023. Lagana Football Club is mentioned in that report as a recipient, and two of my children coach at the club, and I'll submit that electronically towards the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Oh, it's not Sam. It's Luke.
No,
Thanks, Luke.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So we move on to COM 018-23, draft grants and donations policy and draft sponsorship policy. Can I have a Kylie to give us a briefing? Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. Councillors, this report is seeking endorsement of the draft grants and donations policy and the sponsorship policy for public exhibition. So the grants, donations and sponsorship policy was due for review this year. Over the past few years, through the delivery of the grants, donations and sponsorship programs, we have been making a note of any principles or processes in the current policy that we identified to be either inequitable or inaccessible for the community who are essentially the beneficiaries of this policy. All of this was used to inform the review of the policy. We also determined through this process that there was a need for a standalone sponsorship policy, so that has been removed, and we now have the draft sponsorship policy and the draft grants and donations policy. I suppose just to summarise some of the main changes that have been made to the policies, it was ensuring things like the grants programs are more responsive to community needs and budget allocations for each financial year, ensuring grants programs are more equitable to all applicants, improving accessibility, so things like making the language and the formatting easier, consistent language and terminology throughout the policies. Event sponsorship has been renamed to event grants, and the processes are aligned with our other grants programs. There's removal or discontinuation of the heritage publication grants, and also some compliance additions, things like the modern slavery legislation and the Child Safe Organisation, which are now relevant. Does anyone have any questions on either policy? Okay, easy, thank you.
Well, thank you, Kylie. If there is no further questions, can I call for a mover for this item?
I'll move that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mort. Can I have a seconder for that? Oh, Councillor Wayne and Deputy Mayor Councillor Lansbury. Thank you.
Second.
Yeah. And all in favour say aye. Against say no. I declare carried. Then the next one will be COM 019-23, Quarterly Community Property Report, from 1st of April 2023 to 30th June 2023. Can I have our director Christy to give us a briefing? Thank
So
you.
it's our standard quarterly report. The main things to note are the transfer of the lease from Three Bridges Community Limited to Mortdale Men's Shed at Cook Street, Mortdale. We've had St George District Cricket Club have an extension of their licence at Harold Fraser, an extension of the licence for St George Creative Arts at the Pole Depot in Penshurst, and an extension of the licence for the clinical laboratories at Riverwood Park for their COVID testing. The other thing to note, which we have received some council requests on over the last 6 months, is the transferal of Olds Park Sports Club from a community property to a commercial property, so it's more aligned with that portfolio. Are there any questions?
If no, can I call for a mover for this item? Moved by Councillor Ash and Bihapaha, a second by Councillor Mort. All in favour say aye. Against say no. I declare carried. Then we have the report COM 020-23, draft and revised and updated Georges River Council Community Engagement Strategy 2023 to 2032. Can I have Simon to give us an overview? Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, and good evening, councillors. Council resolved to place the community engagement strategy on public exhibition at our March meeting. Under the Local Government Act, we're required to develop a community engagement strategy, and similarly under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act of 1979, council is required to prepare a community participation plan. The requirement of these acts has been met with the preparation of this strategy that's been presented. For context, Georges River developed its first community engagement strategy in 2018. As required, this strategy is now being updated. I just draw your attention to points 5 to 10 in the background section of the report for more details on the legislative requirements and the context, and then specifically to points 13 to 15 around the community engagement that's occurred subsequent to the public exhibition that was adopted in March. Key changes that I wanted to draw out is the additional language to reflect the new post-COVID environment of community engagement and the flexibility required to provide more inclusive options to engage. And we also reflected our child-safe commitment in the new strategy as well. The recommendation is for the committee to adopt the new strategy and then subsequently for council consideration after that. I just also wanted to take the opportunity to acknowledge Kath James and Kathy McMahon and their teams for the work that they've done in preparing this strategy as well. Happy to take any questions.
If not, can I have a mover for this item? Moved by Councillor.
I'll move that, Madam Chair. Luke Konjawski.
Moved by, I think, Councillor Wan. Councillor Konjawski, do you want to second this item? Hi, Lou. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. If you can hear me, Lou. Okay. All in favour say aye. No. Against the no. So I declare carried. So there is no further business on this agenda. I declare this meeting closed at 6:32 p.m. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors.
No, thank you.
Good night.